take a slow breath. Allow yourself to arrive in this moment. For just the next few minutes, set down the pressure to catch up. Set down the need to constantly measure where you are against someone else. We're going to follow someone we'll call the traveler. Like many of us, he spent a lot of time simply observing the people around him. At first, it felt like a helpful tool. He would look at what others were building, learn from their choices, and use those observations as motivation to improve his own life. Over time, that observation turned into a quiet trap. The more he looked outward, the less he appreciated his own position. Without realizing it, he had started running an invisible race, one where no matter how fast he moved, someone else was always further down the track. Every direction he looked provided a new metric for falling behind. Someone was always more successful. Someone was always more confident, more attractive, more accomplished, more certain of their path. There was always another mountain in the distance, and always another person who had already reached the peak. That continuous measurement carried a heavy, unspoken message. It whispered that he was behind schedule. It told him he was late. After hearing it for so long, the idea that he simply wasn't enough started to feel like an absolute truth. This reliance on external benchmarks turned the traveler's journey into a permanent state of deficiency. He was running a race that offered no finish line and no actual way to win. Eventually, the traveler stopped moving and asked himself a different set of questions. If he was behind whom? Late according to whose timeline? Compared to what exactly? This diagram shows the core logical error of comparison. We look at two entirely different life trajectories, shaped by different experiences, opportunities, and challenges. But instead of evaluating the whole path, we judge them using a single vertical slice, an isolated, arbitrary snapshot in time. Looking closely at that slice, we see the first major mismatch. The snapshot forces you to compare your own very early beginning to someone else's established middle. You end up weighing your starting steps against a momentum they've been building for years. Expand the view inside that slice, and you find an even larger distortion. We constantly measure our messy, private struggles, the doubts, the setbacks, the quiet failures, against the polished, superficial highlights that someone else chooses to make public. Analyzing these variables reveals why the logic of comparison breaks down. It fails as a metric because the data points being measured are completely mismatched. To observe an environment operating completely outside of this artificial synchronization, the traveler stepped away from human metrics and into a forest. Here, the physical differences are extreme. Towering, ancient trees with massive canopies exist peacefully, right beside tiny, young saplings that have barely broken through the soil. None of them rush. None of them seem concerned that a neighbor is taller. This is an asynchronous ecology. Some plants here bloom in the early weeks of spring. Others won't show their colors until the final days of autumn. They thrive on entirely separate schedules, simply growing according to their own nature and design, without ever questioning their value. Growth in the natural world is never synchronized. Human beings are biological creatures, and our development, our personal, emotional, and professional growth, is subject to that exact same asynchronous law. Realizing that he was part of this asynchronous system softened something for the traveler. He abandoned the comparative metrics, stopped looking sideways to measure his progress against others, and turned his focus inward. He adopted a completely new set of internal metrics to track his life. He asked himself, was he learning? Was he becoming more honest and compassionate? Was he actually living in alignment with his own internal values, rather than just hitting external milestones? The results of these internal questions felt different. Where the old measurements brought judgment, the new ones brought genuine curiosity. Where the old habit generated relentless pressure, the new focus created space for peace. Life is not a race. Growth is not a competition. Your intrinsic worth operates completely independently of your speed or your ranking next to your peers. A flower that blooms in autumn holds the exact same value as a flower that blooms in spring. They are not better or worse than one another. They are simply blooming in different seasons. And so are you. Someone else's timeline is not your deadline. The exact moment you stop measuring your unique, unrepeatable path against everyone else's, you finally gain the freedom to live your own.